about the policy and the issues and their stance, especially how it affects LGBTQ people, because in the larger forums, our issues often get overlooked or they don't get brought up. And so we really realized that we needed to create a space where we could ask questions about what the impact of each candidate's platform and how that would affect our community positive or negatively. So with that said, I'm going to introduce y'all to the moderators. We have Brad Pritchett here, who really is kind of like the head and the anchor of Transform Houston and all the amazing work that happens there. His pronouns are he, him, and then Andrea Segovia, who is the executive director of Gender Affinity and also the policy for teens, and pronouns she.
Thank you. So we're live streaming, just so folks know, so we can stream. Spectrum South is live streaming better forum tonight, so more people are watching you. And we're going to start with the District 8 race. The way we're typically going to do this is we do a lightning round. The lightning round responses are yes or no questions, or yes or no responses only. And then we'll move into some questions that are a little more substantive. Our timekeeper is going to be right here. We're giving about 12 minutes a segment. So we can fit all the athletic races in as well. So let's Andrea.
I do want to add that for the lightning round, after we're done with yes or no, if there's anything you want to clarify on, we give you a minute afterwards to clarify on an answer that you gave yes or no to. So I'm going to start it off. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance? Councilmember Cisneros.
I supported the ordinance.
I also supported the ordinance.
If elected or re-elected, would you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ plus people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodations?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city of Houston?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policies?
Yes.
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to the Texas legislature to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected or re-elected, would you support City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the Houston city limits?
That's fine. I don't know what the best direction would be in.
So, yes or no, and then at the end, we'll give you a minute to clarify.
Okay. Okay, I will say I don't like it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ban, but I don't know the right format.
So, yes or no for now, and
okay, so
we'll give you a minute at the end to clarify.
okay, so I would support that.
Yes, absolutely.
If elected, will you? Oh, sorry. No. If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission at the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination? The clarification here is that this is not passing any type of non-discrimination ordinance. This is just the creation of a commission to handle discrimination cases with the EEOC.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with the multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop processes and procedures to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is the current practice?
Yes.
Yes.
So we each have a minute if you want to clarify for, so for the one question that you wanted to clarify, Councilmember, around conversion therapy ban, we have 1 minute each to clarify any responses you want to clarify. So let's start.
I'm a horrified with that anyone who tried to pass something like that. But I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the most effective way to do that. That's really the only thing I don't know. And how do we make that not impossible? I mean, that's to say the city council will do that. I don't know that that's the most effective way. That's really I would want guidance on what will work.
So to clarify, you're opposed to conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors, but would need to actually have more information regarding what an ordinance or what power city council has to do with it.
Right, and the effectiveness to do something that's needed.
Well, any answers you'd like to clarify?
No, I'm just happy to see a lot of this on my time on the LGBTQ advisory board, the mayor's LGBTQ advisory board. I was on the policy committee where we put all of these goals on a list, and these are things that we want to see passed. And it's one of my main motivators for running is to make sure that we actually implement these policies effectively.
So we're going to move into a short answer portion, so no more yes or no. So now you can actually clarify answers. And some of these are going to be about policy, some of them are really just about us learning more about emotions of people. So the first question, and I'm going to ask a different version of it to each of you. For Councilmember Cisneros, can you tell us about a time when you supported an LGBTQ person, either personally or professionally?
Yes, we've had my daughter growing up. I mean, our home has always been a very welcoming home, but my daughter's best friend was a young man who came out to our family before he came out to his own. And, you know, and he continues to be a close family friend. But that was really, I guess, my first, most powerful experience of being an important part of the support network for someone that we loved and cared about, but who wasn't getting that from his own family.
So the variation of that question for you as well, as you are a member of the community, probably an easier answer for you. So we're twisting it a little bit. Tell us about a time when you could have supported an LGBTQ person, personally or professionally. Maybe you didn't have the ability to do it, maybe something was a barrier in place that prevented you from doing that, and maybe you learned a lesson from it.
Yeah, sure. I am a minister. I perform weddings, and I got to perform a wedding for my mom and my stepdad and all sorts of folks. And one Christmas morning, an individual asked me to conduct their ceremony, and it was months before equal marriage passed. And I signed my name to that document, knowing that it was just going to get shut down. And that was very frustrating, knowing that I believed in that, they believed in that. They're a loving, supportive couple who are still together today, and we couldn't make it happen legally, and that sucked.
How do you plan on staying engaged with your LGBTQ constituents during your term, if elected?
One of the things that's been really helpful to me is the health department, the city's health department, and the relationship that I developed with Barry Barnes. He's been wonderful there in educating me on issues and making me aware of opportunities that I can be supportive, and I've done that. One of the things, because I didn't know about all the new medical breakthroughs and the new drugs and really ending the epidemic, and that it's in our reach, and things are just amazing. That this last more than a year, I've been also on meeting with the host committee for the 2019 biomedical HIV prevention summit that's about to start. It will be here in December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I've been making connections with this community for volunteers, and also I've contributed $5,000 to help support that. And that's what I look for ways to support, and I do what I've done. I'm a member of the LGBT caucus, and I may be the only person that you hear from today that wasn't endorsed by them who's here, but I'm an ally. I'm a strong, active ally, and that's my commitment, and that's why I'm here today. I don't know that I'm changing any hearts or minds with anyone, but I want you to see me here and to know that.
Yeah, I think it's really important, one, to run out, right? Especially in the Latino community, which we knew in District H was not as favorable as other communities for equal rights ordinances. And two, inviting you all, right, in the GOBT caucus to host events in District H and actually being able to bridge the gap of is the issue, reserving space? Is it doing it in time? Is it knowing who to contact? Is it the fees to rent the spaces that night? because we need to bring LGBTQ events into District H to start normalizing that these types of events don't just happen in certain parts of town, which I know is some excellent work you all are trying to do. But also training myself better, right, to anywhere I am, leading with my pronouns, right, and just breaking that stigma for folks who may not know that, it may not be normalized, maybe just doing it once at a senior meeting, right, or at a civic club could get people talking. And then also bridging the gap for different civic clubs. They're always looking for speakers. How can I say, hey, if you need a speaker tonight, right, why don't I connect you to Gender Infinity, right, to Transform Houston, to the GLBT Caucus? It's about making it seamless and not just saying, well, I'm here for the LGBTQ events. These are LGBTQ month. This is all I'm doing for LGBTQ folks. But integrating it into all of the work we do.
So let's assume a new non-discrimination ordinance is passed. Whether or not you voted for it on council, but from what we learned from both of you so far, we know that you both support that. So that law is now the law. How would you ensure that constituents in District H know the facts about that law and how to access the protections that it provides?
That is a challenge. It's hard to connect with people. There's a lot of people that just don't follow the law. Need the right information. So really every avenue that you possibly can needs to happen. So, if it's published, in newsletters or, on websites, it's spoken at meetings, but just being out in the community and really, I think just talking all the time about all of it, and making connections with people that then become, networks into other people. But especially disconnected, or disengaged people, that is always a challenge, and then those are often the people that need the information the most. So I think every single thing you can do, you should do.
Yeah, I think we need to use every avenue. When we campaign, we do things like block walking and phone banking, and we put out ads and all of this great stuff. And those are the same techniques I think we need to use as elected officials, and not just say, well, those are just for campaign times, right? So it's not just putting it out in the newsletter or on Facebook, but what if we did block walks? And that's one thing I want to do as a council member is every Friday afternoon, go block walk with my staff and any community members who are interested. Get out into the community and just say, hey, not running for anything, I'm your city council member, what can we do for you today? And part of that, right, is a reverse education. Here's information about LGBTQ issues, about non-discrimination ordinance, you may or may not have heard about it, here's some stuff on stray dogs, right, here's some stuff on climate. There's all these opportunities that I don't think we use until it's too late or until it's for a greater cause, and we need to normalize just reaching out to constituents as much as possible.
So now we're going to ask a couple of specific questions that you each will answer. For City Council woman Cisneros, in the September 27th Houston Chronicle endorsement for your race, you were quoted as saying, "I have a very feminine look about me. My voice is soft, and I can tell you that I am often underestimated. LGBTQ people are often attacked for not conforming to gender-specific stereotypes. Can you clarify that statement for us?"
It was in response to an attack on my opponent who was saying that I wasn't vocal enough, or that I wasn't. What did you say? So it was aggressive enough, to implying that that I'm a weak city council member. And so that was my statement. I have been frequently underestimated. I've been told it's because my voice is high and thin, and that people look at me and they go, "Oh, isn't she sweet?" And it was self-defense of myself. It was not an attack on anyone else. It was something, an attack that I've heard before, that people, mistakenly think, and want to assign, their own preconceptions when they look at me, and that's to their detriment sometimes.
Thank you for clarifying it. When something's in print, it's different than when we have the opportunity to talk to someone about it. And for Isabel, should gender expression matter in this race or in politics as a whole?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic for me personally, right? I'm a lesbian woman, but I dress more masculinely, and I get that all the time, and get misgendered, and it is what it is. But what I often go back to is at the Texas Senate, for example, when I was working for Senator Sylvia Garcia, now the Congresswoman, I had my brother who was working in another office, and he would report back to me and say, well, people don't want to work with you because you're too butch, and they call you the butch lesbian all the time. And it was really fascinating because no matter how hard I worked, right, someone else was going to care about my gender expression. And I think that matters in city council too, right? And even in this race is that people are quick to say, well, I don't know, do you think she's strong enough? Or maybe she's a bully just because she speaks up her mind. And just because I'm assertive, I'm confident, doesn't mean that I'm a bully. It doesn't mean anything other than I happen to be a confident leader. And so I think in the reverse, people like to call me a bully or say I'm too mean because I'm more masculinely presenting. And that's something we have to ask ourselves. What does gender expression mean? And why does something, confidence in one person have to be bullying from another person's perspective?
So our final question, and this is your closing. Why are you the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community in the District 8 race? And we'll start with Councilmember Cisneros.
I was not born into this community. I have chosen to embrace this community and have taken it very seriously. I really was very humbled and honored to be recognized as an ally, at the Orgullo Gala this year. I didn't know, I wasn't looking for that, and I was so honored to be recognized that way. I think that speaks to what people see in me, what this community sees in me, and I just, as I learn things like, that HIV is on the rise and women of color, that is really a pressing issue, and I'm using my position to help address that through the promotion of this summit that's coming just in a week or so. It's we have a lot to do. There's so much more hope than there ever was. We've all lost friends to HIV, and that maybe we finally really got a hold of it. It's important. One of the things I've learned is that doctors don't know. A lot of doctors are not taking advantage of the new medications that are available. That's really one of the big goals of this summit. That it's not just people on the street who need to know. It's it's professional, educated people who still don't have the right information. So I'm committed. I'm not just here because I'm one of you. I am choosing to be here and to be to support and to help and to be the best ally I can be.
Yeah. It would be easy to say, oh, because I'm lesbian, so duh, right? But what I often tell people on the trail is being gay is one of the least interesting things about me. I've got a wonderful girlfriend who's here, that's great. Our relationship is more interesting. And I think it's much more than just being out and running as out, which is significant, but it's also about being the kind of person who's never going to walk away from a conversation where someone makes a gay joke where I don't try and stop them and correct them, right? It's going to be being the kind of person who's ready to stand up for my trans friends as well and elevating their voices, even though I don't identify as the trans community. And it's going to be pushing for LGBTQ items, right? Being told every single day, well, it's only because you're gay that you're doing that. As if that's not okay, right? And so for me, it's being able to show up every day, yes, as being representative, but as someone who has a record of never backing down from confrontation, never backing down from a fight, for standing up what's right. And I believe in equal rights where it is. I believe in equal rights. I believe everyone should be able to express themselves how they feel and how they self-determine at the moment that is best for them. And I'm very excited to be with all of you all, right, as a team captain for our collective efforts, instead of just patting myself on the back and saying, well, don't worry, I'm gay, so that's enough.
Well, those are all the questions we have. And we went a little over time, but we wanted to dig in a little bit more to them. So if everyone can give our candidates a hand. Really quickly, because we've got the live stream going, Councilmember, if folks want to find out more about you, will you say your website and the stream?
Absolutely. Karla, Cisneros.com.
Isabel?
Yeah, and if you're on Facebook, you can find me at Longoria, like Ava Longoria, 4H right now.
Great. And we're going to retool and start the next candidate conversation in just a minute. Thank you, candidates. And
Thank you.
we're going to take them out of order. So the next race we're going to do is actually at large 2. Raj let us know that he was running behind earlier, so we're shifting around a little bit. So we're going to reset the table here, and then we're going to start the next conversation. So we're going to go ahead and start here. We're with Councilmember David Robinson. So Councilmember Robinson's opponent is Pastor Willie Davis. We invited the pastor to be here with us multiple times, and I think the council member and his staff can attest for how aggressively we reached out to everybody. We did not get a response, either a yes or a no, or any questions regarding the forum. So, what I am going to do is let you know a little bit about Willie Davis's history on LGBTQ equality from publicly available information. Pastor Willie Davis has run for Houston City Council at-large position previously. With regards to LGBTQ equality, Pastor Davis is known as, this is a quote, the pastor who helped overturn HERO. His opposition to the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance is very well known, and he helped to lead efforts to collect petition signatures to place the repeal on the ballot. A jury of Houstonians later declared those petitions to be forged. Pastor Davis is quoted as saying, "Houston is not a city that discriminates against anybody at any time," which we all know not to be true. Pastor Davis is also a member of the anti-LGBTQ U.S. and Texas Pastors Council. In response to their 2019 questionnaire for their candidate guide, he's on record as wanting to restrict access to abortion, opposing literacy programs like Direct and Storytime, and opposing the passage of an LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination policy at the City of Houston. Again, we did reach out to the he's here. We did reach out to Pastor Davis multiple times to attempt to get him here so we can get clarification on his positions, but that information is what we have been able to gather. It's publicly available. So, thank you, Councilmember, for making the time.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for reading that. That's important information.
Don't worry, I have a whole thing for all the folks who didn't show up. We want to make sure you have all the information when you go to the polls. So again, we're going to start off with a lightning round. There are yes or no questions. At the end of the lightning round, you'll get a minute to clarify any answers you want to provide a little more information about.
Let's get started. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance?
If elected, would you vote in support of a new non-discrimination?
I didn't answer.
Oh, I think so. No.
Did I vote to repeal it?
Did you vote to repeal the ordinance?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was one of the champions of that. I guess we don't narrate this or yes or no.
Yeah.
But I was a strong advocate.
Sorry, I heard a no.
I
Sorry. If elected, would you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ plus people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodation?
Yes, we need to do that.
Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city of Houston?
I will continue to do that enforcement.
Will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policies?
Absolutely.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation for the Texas legislature to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session?
Yes.
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected, would you support the City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the city limits?
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act?
Yes.
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission at the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination? Not just matters of discrimination against LGBTQ people, but all discrimination in the city, including race, disability, gender, and this is a caveat, no ordinance is required to be passed in order to create this commission.
Yes.
The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with the multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop processes and procedures to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is a current practice?
Yes.
So you have a minute to clarify any responses or add anything?
I think just enthusiastically support what this caucus stands for. I know I'm here because of you all and the strong support I've had in the 3 elections that I've run previously. I am grateful for the endorsement. As a Montrose native, almost at this point, I'm an enthusiastic advocate of causes related to my community. I think of this as one that is strongest in the history of our city and really creates better quality of life, frankly, for all Houstonians. I'm grateful to be here.
So we're going to move to the short answer, so you get a little more time here. Tell us about a time when you have supported an LGBTQ person, either personally or professionally.
Well, I was thinking a little bit this weekend. this was the weekend that has the Yale-Harvard football game. And I went to Yale as an undergraduate back in the 1980s. And it was then where this weekend there was a protest on the field where the young undergraduates streamed onto the field in protest of global climate change and trying to lend some advocacy for issues related to carbon issues, and was online with all of my college roommates about the times when we were on campus. And that was a time, like the students at Yale this weekend who got arrested for their protests, when it was noted by all of us that I was the one of our friends who was arrested for protesting the university's investment in apartheid. That's not the same as those same years that I wore the pink triangle on my lapel, but I was an advocate with my college roommate who was gay and very out and open. I've had roommates who were gay throughout the years. I grew up in a place called Northampton, Massachusetts, where Smith College is an all-women's college and a strong place for gender equality and advocacy of LGBT rights. I think that is part of the reason why I'm absolutely, I believe, a champion for this cause and will be to the day I die.
Thank you. Sorry. How would you plan on staying engaged with your LGBTQ constituents during your term?
Well, for one, I think it's well known to many in the room that my communications director is a very active member of the LGBT caucus. He and his husband were married, I think, a year and a half ago now. Gareth is his name. He is a wonderful guy, and we frequently talk about the things that we are working on together. And while I attend many caucus meetings, he is someone who has been put in various positions of advocacy, both by the caucus itself as well as by the administration, current and past. And friendships like I have with folks like Denise Parker and others will continue to contribute to my proximity to the causes and working as tirelessly as I can.
So this year, 24 people have died in custody at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including a transgender network, 2 transgender women this year. So city council members are more than legislators, they're voices for the community. How would you use your voice as a council member to defend asylum seekers and undocumented residents here in Houston?
I will continue to speak up about those rights and about finding opportunities to advocate on their behalf and work to protect their integrity, their life, physically, emotionally, and there are many ways that we must do this. But work, I think, as you suggested again, higher up the food chain of the political ladder, where we can advocate for policy that is going to make things better. And we have to do that here locally, but it's something that we can not quit on.
November is Transgender Awareness Month and an important time to highlight the challenges of the transgender community. This year, Texas has led the nation in the number of transgender people who lost their lives due to violence, and here in Houston, the murder of Tracy Single is a stark reminder of the dangers transgender people face. What do you think the role of City Council is in helping to protect transgender Houstonians from the epidemic of violence?
Well, first of all, we must call attention to the need. That it is a shadow crime in many ways that people do not know nearly enough about, and it's something that really gets at the humanity of the issues. I think to understand the suffering that is going on, but some of what needs to happen to advocate for the community, to try to think about their particular vulnerabilities and how we can work not only with city policy and ordinance making, but with our police and public safety professionals to be aware and to be alert to the ways in which we can protect the transgender and trans community in general.
How will you ensure that LGBTQ elders have the resources they need for their physical and mental well-being once they retire from the workforce here in the city?
Well, one thing I know, I've been an active member of the housing committee for the city of Houston, and the recently opened new facility, the first of its kind, that is an affordable housing complex in the city for the LGBT community, is one of those things that we've just begun to work on. So that's good for housing, which is an important first step in sheltering members of the community, especially those who are on a fixed income or have other vulnerabilities where their healthcare needs and their mental wellness needs in particular Pharmaceutical drugs continue to be very, very expensive for all of us, so ways in which the health department can advocate for programs that fortify our ability to take care of ourselves and each other. That's, I think, very, very important for us. The committee that I've been the vice chairman of, the Quality of Life Committee, is responsible, among other departments, for the health department. So I imagine that I will continue in that capacity after we win this election. Pastor Davis, what do you think?
He's like, took his breath away. Tell us why you're the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community for your particular race.
Because I'm the only one to represent the particular needs of the LGBT community in my race. It is absolutely clear what you read earlier, Brad, and the homophobia that my opponent demonstrates is tangible, it's nauseating. I've seen it recently on council where he's come before us with the drag queen story hour item in particular, where it is just beyond my understanding that he feels so strongly, along with some of the others that have come before us. It is absolutely ridiculous that we are not, in this day and age, allowed to pursue our own interests, especially in a public library. It's an embarrassment for this gentleman.
Thank you, Councilmember, for being here. I appreciate it.
I'm grateful to be here.
We're live streaming on Spectrum South this evening, so if you could let folks know if they want to find out more information where they can find it.
Well, I'd like to do that, and my website is davidwrobinson.org. That's where you can find out more information. We outline our basic platform, some of those issues that I've been championing, and I know that my campaign manager is here with us today photographing. His name is Andre Ross, and he will be posting things to our Facebook site, DWR4HOU, DWR4HOU.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into the at-large position 1 race. So we invited both candidates to be here. Obviously, we have one, Raj is here. So in the interest of transparency, I'm going to let you know what we know about Councilmember Mike Knox with regards to LGBTQ equality. It was a long one, so forgive me. But I'm going to try to get to it. So Councilmember Mike Knox was elected to the City Council in November of 2015. While City Council has not voted on any notable LGBTQ proposals or policies during his tenure on Council, what we can tell you about his positions on LGBT equality are as follows. In 2016, he participated in protests alongside anti-LGBTQ activist Tex Christopher, protesting Target, the store Target's inclusive restroom policy. Councilmember Knox was quoted by media at the event saying, "Equality is the same for you as it is for me. If someone has a greater right to use a bathroom than someone else as an expression of their sexuality, then that's a problem." This quote demonstrates a clear misunderstanding of the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity, which we would have been happy to tell him had he been here. In addition to that position, Councilmember Knox has also opposed funding for the census and did not participate in the candidate screening process of the nonpartisan Houston LGBT political caucus. He did, however, respond to the candidate questionnaire and guide for the anti-LGBTQ U.S. Pastors Council for the 2019 candidate guide. He's on record as being in favor of restricting access to abortion, opposing literacy programs like Drag Queen Storytime, and opposing the passage of comprehensive LGBTQ non-discrimination. In 2015, he signed the petition to repeal the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. So unfortunately, we can't ask the council member to clarify his positions on LGBTQ equality, but I do want to point out that, again, as the candidates can attest, we worked vigorously to try to get candidates to attend and made ourselves available to answer any questions they might have had. And we're always interested in giving folks a fair shake when they come before us. So, that's what we know about Councilmember Knox, and now we'll move into the actual questions. Again, the first portion of this is lightning round, yes or no questions. You'll have a minute at the end to clarify any responses you want.
So we're going to get started. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance?
No. If elected, will you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodations?
Yes.
Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city of Houston?
Yes.
Will will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policies?
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to the Texas legislature to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session?
Yes.
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected, would you support City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the city limits?
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act?
Yes.
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission at the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination, not just to LGBTQ people, but to also people with disabilities, gender, race, and other discrimination points?
Yes.
The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with the multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop processes and procedures to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is the current practice?
Yes.
Do you have a minute? Do you want to clarify anything or add anything?
Thanks for giving me an opportunity. I think one thing that's really important to me is trying to make sure that we're as accessible as possible, which I know is not directly related, but I just want to say that one of the things that I really am trying to do on this campaign is be as open and accessible as possible, and I'm excited to work with all communities.
So the first question we have in the short answer portion, you have a little more time here. Tell us about a time when you supported an LGBTQ person, either personally or professionally.
So when I was in law school, I was representing folks being evicted from their home as a student attorney. And we had a client whose landlord was trying to evict in part because he was gay. And there was also another violation of the contract that the landlord had alleged. As a student attorney, we could not represent him in court. However, we were able to represent him in the administrative hearing to make sure he maintained his apartment, and then we referred him to an attorney who then actually recovered damages for him because the landlord was trying to evict him for that. And so that was one sort of situation where kind of saw the interplay between housing and sexual orientation.
How do you plan on staying engaged with your LGBTQ constituents during your term?
I think a couple of things. I think one is making sure that we have staff members who identify as a member of the community, making sure that everybody on the staff is either a member or an ally of the community. Number three is I know that the mayor has boards and commissions that he or she appoints members to, and those are sort of more advisory for the mayor. So I would imagine trying to create a board for my own council office of members of the community who could sort of continue to keep me advised and informed on issues affecting the community.
So I'm going to switch to a couple of community submitted questions. We did an online forum, so folks can go online and submit questions in advance of the forum. So I've pulled some of those questions and we're going to ask you for those. And then we'll also ask some of the questions we brought up earlier as well. So food insecurity is a huge concern among LGBTQ seniors and transgender Houstonians. Many Houston communities exist within food deserts. How will you work to address this problem of food deserts in the city of Houston, particularly in low-income communities? As an at-large council member, you represent everyone in the city, so you're not confined to specific districts.
Right. So I think a couple of things. One is the city of Houston gets money through the community development block grants, which we can use to incentivize grocery stores to go into communities as we've done, for example, the HEB on McGregor and the Pipers and Sunnyside. Number two is I know that Commissioner Ellis has a program where he doubles the value of food stamps if you use it on fruits or vegetables. So that's another thing I think we should look at. So those would be a couple ideas.
And then this one was written down here at the forum. What have you done or what do you want to do to help convicted felons get jobs that are not just, lower wage jobs?
I think one thing is we got to make sure we maintain and continue to ban the box, so you don't have to sort of check that off. Number two is I think providing incentives for our companies here to hire those who are formerly incarcerated. I think number three is perhaps even holding job training or job fairs as well, because I know we can sometimes assume that the minute folks come out of incarceration, they're immediately ready to go back into the workforce, but depending on how long they may have been incarcerated, they may need some sort of skills training, which I think the city can partner to make sure we're doing.
So this year, 24 people have died in the custody of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including at least 2 transgender women. City council members are more than just legislators, you're the voice of the community. How would you use your voice to support and defend asylum seekers and undocumented residents here in the city of Houston?
I think so a couple different ways. I think number one is making sure that we repeal laws like SB4, which my opponent supported. Number two is I think working to make sure we don't have detention centers here in the city. And then I think number three is when we see these issues coming up, speaking out against them, and even if we don't have the policy lever here in the city of Houston, doing the advocacy, whether it's at the state level or at the federal.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to this. So, stopping detention centers from opening, have you thought about how to address detention centers that are already open in the city of Houston?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I think one is obviously we have codes that we can enforce, and I know that we don't have necessarily people power to enforce the codes in every single situation, but I think we should for sure in detention centers be very, very vigilant on that. I think number two is making sure that, if there's any violation, making sure that we're swiftly bringing that to the attention and even closing them down to the extent we can't do it.
November is Transgender Awareness Month, and an important time to highlight the challenges of the transgender community. This year, Texas has led the nation in the number of transgender people who lost their lives due to the violence, and here in Houston, the murder of Tracy Single is a stark reminder of the dangers transgender people face. What do you think the role of City Council is in helping to protect transgender Houstonians from this epidemic of violence?
I think step one is recognizing and accepting and articulating that this is a challenge faced here in the city of Houston, the state and the country more broadly. I think number two is dedicating resources to ensure that we're providing services to support those in the community. And then I think number three is making sure we are investigating certainly all murders, but certainly the focus on those that are affecting underserved communities of all types, including transgender.
How will you take on housing affordability, especially in the poor minority communities?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think one is looking at using money we get from the TERSs, for example. About a third of the TERS budgets are supposed to go for affordable housing. We can actually use that to make sure we're spending that money on affordable housing. I think number two is looking at mixed income housing as well to ensure that we're not just concentrated housing in certain areas. I think number three is in the second ward, we're sort of piloting the community land trust model. That's a good idea to pilot, but we can look to expand that as well. And then I think number four is, we often talk about multi-family housing, which is obviously part of the solution. So is the single-family housing, and so what can the city do, whether it's refinancing, supporting programs, whether it's first-time mortgage support programs, to not just focus on the multi-family, but also the single-family.
And this is your closing. Why are you the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community in your particular race?
Well, we're the only one here, so start with that. But the second one, and I think the more important one, is we worked on this campaign throughout being a teacher and then as a student attorney to support all communities, including the LGBTQ community. Obviously, we're very thankful to have the caucus endorsement and their support, Stonewall Dems as well. And I'm also proud to say that we have members of our staff who identify as part of the community. And to me, that matters. To me, it's important that we have folks in the room who are part of the community, who are around the table. And then I think number four is we've tried to listen and advocate for things like Hero 2.0, for things like ensuring that, for example, one thing we did not talk about is could we look at extending the MWBE definition to include businesses owned by LGBTQ folks as well, to ensure that we're not just focusing on the legal equality piece, but also the economic piece.
So would you, since we're streaming live on Spectrum South, would you let folks who are watching know how to find more information about your campaign?
Sure. So you can visit our website at www.rajforhouston.com, or you can call me directly. This is the number my mom uses when she calls me, which I give out to every Houstonian, 713-320-0303, and I will pick up the phone and I will respond. I'm excited to hear from you.
If your phone starts ringing right now, then that would be
Yes.
Thank you, Raj, for coming.
Thank you.
And so we're going to move into at-large history. again. So I get to read my descriptor about the person who's not here. So Councilmember Michael Kubash is not here. Here's what we know about Councilmember Kubash in regards to LGBTQ equality. Councilmember Kubash was elected in 2013 to the at-large jury position. With regards to LGBTQ equality, Councilmember Kubash has been an outspoken opponent of LGBTQ rights during his time on the City Council. He voted in opposition to passage of the Youth and Equal Rights Ordinance and supported efforts by anti-LGBTQ activists and organizations to repeal the law. At a rally during 2015's election, he's quoted as saying, "God put me on City Council to oppose this ordinance." Councilmember Kubash has received the most money on City Council from anti-LGBTQ activists David Hotze. He did not participate in the nonpartisan Houston GLBT political caucus candidate screening process, but he did respond to the anti-LGBTQ U.S. Pastor Council candidate guide, wherein he supports restricting, Eric, he supports restricting access to abortion. That's not the right one. I don't know if that is. Well,
I don't know that whole case.
that's something. Eric, you wrote
There we
it. Where he supports restricting access to abortion, opposes literacy programs like Directing Storytime, opposes the passage of an LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination law, and supports the definition of marriage as being between one man and one woman. In his Pastor's Council questionnaire, he's also quoted as saying that he led the effort on City Council to oppose HERO, and he's also been a supporter of the organization Mass Resistance, which is recognized as a hate group of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Again, he reached out to all the candidates in an attempt to get them to participate. Councilmember Kubash did not respond in any way, shape, or form.
I didn't even get an invitation to that.
Consider yourself fine. It's good. Yeah, that's fine. You're probably better. So we'll move into the first section here, which is our lightning round. These are yes or no responses only. We'll give 1 minute at the end to clarify if the answer if you want to get clarification.
She's right. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance?
I did not vote for repeal. I actually worked with friends to help educate communities on the protected classes.
Yes or no?
Oh, sorry.
Even though it's a good answer.
I figured I can use up this time.
If elected, will you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodations?
Yes.
Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city?
Yes.
Will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policy?
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to the Texas legislature to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session?
Yes.
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected, would you support City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the city limits?
Absolutely.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act?
Absolutely.
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission for the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination, not just to LGBTQ people, but also on disability, gender, race discrimination?
All
The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with the multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop procedures and policies, to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is the current practice?
So you have a minute to clarify your responses or add any responses.
Kubash was in Maryland tonight. I am fortunate to have the support of one of my colleagues in that race, Marcel Clinton, who represented me this evening, where he was confronted by Kubash, yelling that we should be apologetic for calling him a homophobe and that we're lying in the name of the Lord. I'll say this. You may not consider yourself a homophobe or a Republican, but the homophobes and the Republicans certainly do. Just saying.
Good use of a minute. So we'll move to the short answer section. You have a little more time here to clarify. Can you tell us about a time when you supported an LGBTQ person personally or professionally?
My entire life has been filled with people from various backgrounds. So actually the first person I realized was part of the LGBT community was in fourth grade. And I advocated for a classmate. And so I advocate for my children who are members of the community, I advocate for my colleagues who are members of the community, I advocate for friends who are like family, who are part of the community. It's absolutely a part of my life. And there's every opportunity I have to stand with them and be an accomplice and an ally, I will.
How do you plan on staying engaged with your LGBTQ constituents during your term?
My kids are going to charge me up. But no, I have great friends who have been a part of my kitchen cabinet with this process to make sure that I'm not missing anything. You know, some of them are here tonight, and I greatly appreciate their support and their clarity in how to handle every possible issue, even when you may miss it, bringing it to light, particularly in our trans and gender nonconforming communities as they develop their voice in this larger conversation.
So this year, 24 people have died in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including 2 transgender women at least. City council members are more than just legislators. You're a voice for the community, and as an at-large council member, you represent the entire city. How will you use your voice on council to support and defend asylum seekers and undocumented residents?
I absolutely defend all asylum seekers who are not predatory or criminal individuals, which is the majority of the individuals seeking asylum here in the United States, particularly here in Texas and Houston. I will advocate for them by supporting organizations like Baker Ripley have done a tremendous job working with the immigrant community to ensure that they have proper representation and access to information so that they can advocate for themselves and their needs. You know, you said before, I will be an amplifier for those who need asylum, who are seeking asylum, which again is the majority of those individuals who need the care and support of our government.
How will you take on housing affordability, especially in the poor minority communities?
I lived with before, grew up in Trinity Gardens, so one place is poor enough for you to know about, the other place is so poor that you don't know about. So I am experiencing that right now, but making sure that there is mixed income available in those communities, and making sure that there isn't a tax burden placed on our senior citizens, ensuring that individuals understand the pathway to home ownership, and making sure overall that there is culturally competent development, because those communities deserve to have development, they deserve to thrive, but not at the risk of losing their home state. And people who are coming in need to understand the culture and the energy and vibrancy of the communities that they're entering.
So these are some questions that were submitted online from folks, and I'm gonna just pick a couple of them maybe to go through. The Texas city of Wasco has declared itself a sanctuary city for the unborn, passing a local ordinance which would ban access to abortion within the city limits and could also include banning contraceptive access. If elected, will you ensure that Houston city government never tries to interfere with a woman's constitutional right to abortion access? And what can a city council member do to ensure that issues like what are happening in Wausau aren't being replicated here in Houston?
I'll fight like hell against it in every possible way, whether it's policy or if it's advocacy. You know, it's a very comfortable place to be in if you believe that there is no circumstance in which a woman or a minor would have to seek out abortion services. This isn't a simple solution to any issue. And so we need to be respectful of the trial and tribulations and the thoughtfulness that that person is placed in making that decision. And I don't think we need to legislate that whatsoever.
What have you done, or what do you want to do to help convicted felons get jobs that are better than minimum wage?
So one of the things I'm most proud of is working on an expunction program while in Precinct 1. Honestly, it is transformative to see people who have made missteps, who may have been over-policed or over-penalized for their childhood mistakes, have an opportunity to live a life that they dreamed that wasn't possible before, that giving somebody their ID back allows them to get a job and live in a place that they can be proud of. And people deserve second chances. But go, what is it? Vote, go, where's there for our or whatever. I'm Catholic, I don't know. I just know what they tell me. Yes. But growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, I didn't always make the right choices. And I am grateful to be one of the individuals who isn't living out the results of those choices now. But every person is redeemable. in some way. And so to not give that person the opportunity, I think is damaging to society. And I will advocate for those people who want to change their lives at every possible opportunity. And expanding that exposure program is definitely, I'm for banning the box the whole time. So
as a follow-up question to that, would you be in support of the city passing a debtor's prison ordinance within the city limits?
let me tell you.
Since city council has control over municipal, can have control over municipal jails.
So there's this guy, Kubash. He's made millions of dollars by placing people in debtor's prison. I have worked a number of years in spite of what he believes. He thinks that I was just put up to this recently. But again, I grew up in a neighborhood where people have to make unfortunate choices and they're not always on the right side. And so in order for them to make restitution, putting them in debtor's prison, because that's often the basis for which they make those decisions, like an outdated sticker or a stolen baby formula, it makes absolutely no sense. So I'm going to fight like hell against that too.
Okay, so here's your closing question. Why are you the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community in your race?
Sure. I am committed to this community, both personally and professionally. I'm a minority, a woman, a Black woman, and I am very clear in that position how difficult it is to identify your personhood in these spaces. So there's a genuine empathy there. But above all, I'm an advocate for all people because you can't allow a community to be suppressed because you're setting a precedent for all communities to be suppressed. And that makes absolutely no sense. No community, no individual should be discriminated against or treated poorly because of who they love. How dare you? It's love. It's not an act of aggression, it's love. So where would you, it makes no sense to me. Again, personally, professionally, it's going to be a part of my lifelong journey.
So we're live streaming on Spectrum South. Can you let folks know where to find out more information about your organization?
So my site is the hub for all things related to our campaign. It's jcfor3.com. That's jc43.com.
Thank you, Janaeya, for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move into the at-large 4 race. As you can see, we have one of two candidates here. I'm going to read what we know about, this is Dr. Plummer. I'm going to read what we know about Dr. Plummer's opponent, as we've done with the other races where folks haven't showed up. Anthony Josephino is a first-time candidate. He began this election cycle in the District C City Council race, but moved to the at-large 4 race after Councilmember Amanda Edwards announced her resignation to run for Senate. Mr. Josephino participated in the District C Pride Forum that we held back in June, where he made pledges to support LGBTQ equality, including passage of a new non-discrimination law. Video of statements at that Pride Forum are available if folks are interested in looking. Spectrum South also streamed that particular Pride Forum. However, Mr. Josephino did not participate in the Houston LGBT political caucus candidate screening process, but he did choose to participate in the anti-LGBTQ U.S. Pastors Council candidate guide, where he makes pledges that are in direct opposition to the statements that he made in the June Pride Forum. For example, he supports the definition of marriage here as being between one man and one woman. He supports restricting access to abortion. He opposes the passage of an LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination law in Houston and opposes literacy programs like Drag Me Story Time. Since the pastor's guide was actually filled out for his at-large 4 race, we can only assume that these are his final thoughts on LGBTQ equality. Additionally, in 2018, Mr. Josephino was the vice chairman of the Young Conservatives of Texas, where he participated in a pro-Brett Kavanaugh demonstration on campus and organized events on UT's campus with Katie Hopkins, who represents the right-wing white nationalist student group Turning Point USA. Again, we reached out to all candidates in an attempt to get them to participate. Mr. Josephino did not respond to us in any way, shape, or form. So, that's what we know about that. We're going to move into our candidate questions for Dr. Plummer. The first portion is a lightning round. These are yes or no responses, and you'll have 1 minute at the end to clarify any answers.
So we're going to get started. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance?
If elected, will you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodation?
Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city of Houston?
Yes.
Will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policy?
Yes.
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to the Texas legislature, as somebody who works there, to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session?
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected, would you support City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the city limits?
If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act? If you are elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act?
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission at the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination towards LGBTQ people, people with disabilities, race, gender?
The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with the multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop processes and procedures to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is the current practice?
So those are all the yes or no questions we have. Do you have a minute you'd like to clarify or expand on any responses?
No, I think those are great questions.
So the next section is short answer. You'll have a little bit more time to answer your question. We are asking variations of this question, everyone. Tell us about a time when you supported an LGBTQ person, either personally or professionally.
So I would say that my most proud moment was when I passed legislation to support adoption service rights in the state of Texas. So I had a personal experience in my life, but what I realized when I went to fight for that legislation, or I wrote the legislation actually, but when I went to fight for it to convince our lawmakers to support the legislation, they basically told me that the only way they would allow that, they would vote for the bill, was if I clearly stated within the amendment, the Family Code Amendment, that it would exclude LGBTQ members. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that, which we lost the legislation. But that was a loss I was willing to take, because I believe that everyone should be able to create families in the way that they want to, and every child deserves a healthy family to live with. So, but I will say that this last legislative session passed unanimously. So I do believe that we have more commonalities than we have differences. But that is one time we were definitely in line with each other, creating families we wanted.
How do you plan on staying engaged with your LGBTQ constituents during the term?
Well, I've been supportive the whole entire time. I don't ever try to understand the discrimination that a lot of the LGBTQ community experiences. But I will say my personal life, I'm a Black woman that's Muslim. Being raised Muslim my entire life was very difficult because of all of the things and all the discrimination happened to me personally growing up, trying to explain to people who I was, what I stood for, why I wasn't a bad person. And so I think those conversations are very similar to the conversations that the LGBTQ community does have. And so I understand what it feels like for someone not to understand me. I understand what it feels like to always kind of be on the defensive. And so I'm going to support equal rights. I'm going to support equity. And when you say those words and you've been there before, I think it automatically aligns you. So whatever the community needs, I'm going to stand with them and support.
So let's assume that a new non-discrimination ordinance is passed in the city of Houston. Whether you voted for it or not, although you said you would support it, how will you ensure constituents, since you're a citywide elected official, know the facts about that law, since the last ordinance was built, our opponents spent a lot of lives on it, and how will you make sure that your constituents know how to access that law to protect them?
So I think the city of Houston does not do a very good job in disseminating information. And so I come from a public health background. And so when we let people know what's going to harm them from a health perspective, there are very clear ways that we get the information out to make sure the community is aware of it. I would kind of align it in the same way, door knocking. making sure that every community's in, clustered forms, know the actual information. Someone's there speaking on it with the facts and not assumptions. Being crazy town halls so that people that may not be a part of the community can understand what the differences are, how that can affect them as well. When you're trying to change legislation like that, when you have so many people working against you, it's imperative that you have forums, open forums that the public can go to, online screens so people can always stay engaged. And I think canvassing, I know it sounds kind of, I don't think about the old way of doing things. I know social media is the way we do that, but I think if you get to the door in front of somebody, you can really speak to them and answer questions full on. I think that makes a big difference. And so those are a couple of things I would do to change it.
So November is Transgender Awareness Month, and an important time to highlight the challenges of the transgender community. This year, Texas has led the nation in the number of transgender people who lost their lives due to violence. And here in Houston, the murder of Tracy Single is a stark reminder of the dangers transgender people face. What do you think the role of City Council is in helping to protect transgender Houstonians from this epidemic of violence?
I believe first we acknowledge it. I mean, we have to recognize this is a major problem within our community, and Black women bleed in that. And so we have to bring this up in issues and not be afraid to have the conversations, but bring it and acknowledge them first. And then after we do that, then we have conversations with our law enforcement. And we hold them accountable and make sure that they, just in the same way that we're trying to develop more diversity training within our officers, we need to do the same thing in that sense as well. Educate them, let them know what the signs are, let them know what the cry out is and how to protect them, because it's crucial. Every life matters. It doesn't matter of what community you come from. Every single life matters. We're talking now about pedestrians and cycling and making sure that this is more important than that is. People have to live their lives in the way they feel the most comfortable, and there's got to be protection.
So food insecurity is a big concern among LGBTQ seniors and transgender Houstonians who are oftentimes underemployed. Many Houston communities exist within food deserts. You're running for a citywide seat.
Yes.
How will you address the problems of food deserts, particularly in low-income communities?
Sure. So that's actually one of the issues I have on my cards. Is eliminating food deserts. Typically, we think of food deserts at lower socioeconomic level, but then let's bring in the homelessness too. The LGBT community also leads in youth homelessness as well, and then they can't get what they need. So I'm looking at community. So the mayor talks about complete communities. Often he talks about affordable housing in relation to that. I want to bring in the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Food, shelter, and so what I would like to see is if we're going to put housing in a certain area, we have to make sure we've got good things to eat, healthcare facilities that are there, find all the things that someone needs and that is in those particular clusters and areas. And we need to start low-income areas. The reason why I'm running for office is for equity. There's zip code should not dictate if we eat well. And so I would like to start at the level of the playing field, create corporate, private, and public collaborations to bring good food to communities.
So this is your closing. Okay. Why are you the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community in your race?
So I think a lot that you read earlier kind of states that from a personal perspective. I just understand what it feels like to not be accepted. I know the hurt that you feel. I know how difficult it is to constantly defend and protect. And so, and I fought legislation to stand with our community to make sure that families are attainable. And so, no one else in this particular race, especially not my opponent, has ever fought for equity in any way. As a matter of fact, he fights against it. And so I really feel like I'm the only choice in this, and I promise you that I will support everything that will be here on the open door policy to ensure that all of the needs are met within the community. And if we are not on both sides, I need to get me there. I'm going to really lean on you to make sure I stay engaged, hold me accountable if you don't feel like I am, and then just continue the conversation.
So we're streaming on Spectrum South on Facebook right now, so if you'll let us know and let folks who are watching know how to find out more information about you.
Yes, so our web address is Plummer for Houston, PLUMMER, FOR, Houston.com. And you can find us on Facebook, not Snapchat yet, Instagram, and Twitter. And HoustonForever.com, also something that we own as well, so that will take you straight to our website. We love to have your support. It's a very important election, and runoffs matter. So get engaged, take a friend, and early voting starts in 2 days. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the at-large 5 race. This is our last one for the evening. First and foremost, I just want everybody to acknowledge that Sallie's been here all night long, so thank you so much for sticking it out. We saved a couple that we haven't asked for the very end. So again, as you can see, we've got one candidate, and our opponent is not here, so I'm going to read what we know about Eric Dick, so folks have an understanding of his position on LGBTQ equality. So, Eric Dick is currently a member of the Harris County Department of Education representing Precinct 4. He's also previously run for Houston City Council. With regards to LGBTQ equality, there have not been any LGBTQ policies up for a vote during his time on the HCDE board. But what we do know is that Mr. Dick has acted as the pro bono attorney to anti-LGBTQ activist Tex Christopher in his lawsuit against the city of Houston over drag queen story time. Since 2016, he's personally donated more than $20,000 of his own money to anti-LGBTQ activist Stephen Hoaxie's organization, the Conservative Republicans of Texas, which is a recognized hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Mr. Dick did not participate in the nonpartisan Houston GLBT political caucus screening. He also didn't participate in the U.S. Pastors Council's candidate guide. What we have here are just some contributions that he's made to the Conservative Republicans of Texas and other anti-LGBTQ individuals, so you can see what he's spending his money on. Again, we reach out to all the candidates aggressively in an attempt to get them scheduled for this forum. Mr. Dick did actually respond to the email that we sent out, but did not RSVP to attend. So, we'll move on to the candidate we have here, Sallie Alcorn. So the format of this is our first section is a lightning round, yes or no answers, and at the end we'll give you a minute to clarify or expand on anything you'd like. That's it.
I know, sorry, I was getting notes. In 2015, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was placed on the ballot for a public vote. Did you vote to repeal the ordinance? No.
If elected, will you vote in support of a new non-discrimination ordinance that covers LGBTQ people in public and private employment, housing, and public accommodation?
Yes. Will you vote to support public funding for HIV/AIDS in the city of Houston? Yes.
Will you vote to ensure that transgender city employees have access to health care through their city insurance policies?
Yes. If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to the Texas legislature to oppose any anti-LGBTQ bills filed in the next legislative session? Yes.
The American Medical Association has called for a ban of LGBTQ conversion therapy. If elected, would you support City Council passing an ordinance to ban conversion therapy of LGBTQ minors within the city limits?
Yes. If elected, will you pledge to lobby the Houston delegation to Congress to pass the Federal Equality Act? Yes.
Would you support the creation of a Human Rights Commission of the City of Houston to assist the EEOC in reviewing matters of discrimination, not just LGBTQ people, but based on disability, race, and gender?
Yes. The United Nations has declared that solitary confinement in jails and prisons is considered torture. Would you be willing to work with multiple law enforcement agencies in the Houston area to ensure they develop processes and procedures to house LGBTQ people that take into consideration their safety, while avoiding placing them in solitary confinement, which is the current practice? Yes.
So you have a minute to clarify or expand on any answers you'd like.
Definitely in favor of passing another non-discrimination ordinance. There's just no place in Houston for discrimination. Public accommodations, housing, employment. We've got to join the rest of the world. Get with the program.
So we'll move into the next section. This is a short answer. You get a little more time to explain. Tell us about a time when you supported an LGBTQ person, either personally or professionally.
Well, personally, in my own family, there have been people who have come out, and older members of my family, extended family, who have had a really hard time with it. And I feel like I'm the go-to in my family to kind of be the go-between between the younger person who's come out and the older person who might not understand. So it's really 3 different people in my extended family that I feel like bridge that gap between the older person that was having a really hard time with it and the younger person who was coming out. And not that I was the only person, but I felt like I had a lot of great personal conversations to help kind of the older generation understand and accept.
So I do want to make a clarification, especially for our live stream. While I've been asking this question and mentioning Tracy Single, I've forgotten Italy Marlowe. So November is Transgender Awareness Month, and an important time to highlight the challenges of the transgender community. This year, Texas has led the nation in the number of trans murders, which has happened because of violence. And here in Houston, the murder of Tracy Single and Italy Marlowe are a stark reminder of the dangerous transgender people face. What do you think the role of City Council is in helping to protect transgender Houstonians from the epidemic of violence?
It's just what you're saying the names are very important. And drawing attention to this epidemic is very important. It's something that I've actually learned a lot more about on the campaign trail. And so I think it's a matter of education. I think it's also a matter of providing transgender cultural competence training to city employees, police, fire, health department, public-facing employees should be properly trained to identify the special needs and vulnerabilities of the community.
So we have a few questions that were submitted to our online form. So I'm going to ask you one of those, and it's not one we've asked yet, so you've been here the whole time, you didn't get yours.
Okay.
The Berkeley City Council recently passed an ordinance to change all the city codes to match gender-neutral standards. So, for example, they're changing words like manpower to things like human effort. Would you support an equitable language ordinance, or not an ordinance necessarily, and look at how we can make code more friendly to folks who identify as non-binary?
Absolutely.
What have you done or want to do to help convicted felons get better jobs and prisoner relief?
So I do volunteer work at the Darrington Unit in the Restorative Justice Program. So I have heard firsthand how hard it is for felons to get out of jail and have a really hard time finding a job. Or if they do find a job, it's really menial and they get really bored. So I think there are things we can do on job training. We have a good program, Live in a Second Chance program at the city. I want to make sure we have funding for that. It's right now funded a lot through the 1115 waiver program from the Social Security Act, and that funding is dwindling. So I want to make sure we get funding, and I'll be happily seeking other private funding for that too. I think there will be a lot of interest in that. And city funding to continue that strong program and provide people with the skills and job training, make sure the city itself is hiring people from that community. And, you know, it can't just be a job that's going to be menial forever. It's so important that we have a track for people and they can advance like everybody else can in their careers. So anything I can do to advocate for that.
How do you ensure that LGBTQ seniors have the resources they need for their physical and mental well-being once they retire from the workforce?
Well, I think like one of the other people, I was at the groundbreaking of the Montrose Center housing there, so more facilities like that are needed in the city of Houston. The city's a good convener. I mean, we can't do everything for everyone, but we're a good convener. And there's so many great nonprofits and advocacy organizations that the city can kind of bring together. The city's the big gorilla in the room, so we can bring everybody together and make a resource guide. You know, make something easily accessible to seniors, a guide of where they can find the resources they need.
How will you take on housing affordability, especially in the poor minority communities?
Well, we need to properly leverage our federal grant money, our community development block grant money, our home investment partnerships money, HOPWA money to make sure that we are providing the gap financing so developers can build more affordable housing. I'm also a proponent of more mixed income housing. We don't want all just low income housing units, and more mixed income housing. The TERS affordable housing dollars are very important, and the state hasn't done a good job of making sure that those dollars are being spent on lasting affordable housing. over the last 10 years, I think we've had about $130 million going towards that effort that only now very few affordable housing units are left from those dollars.
So let's assume that a new non-discrimination ordinance is passed. Your position is you would vote in support of that ordinance. As a city-wide elected official and that large position, how will you ensure your constituents know the facts about that law and how to properly access it?
Again, that's education. That's getting the word out. And the city is a good convener, and we just have to make every effort to let citizens know that you now have these protections. If we pass the ordinance, you now have these protections, and do everything that we can with our partners to get the word out. It's all about partnership with the city. The city cannot be the answer to everything. We have to do more through our partnerships, build more partnerships, seek out more partnerships, and help and have the people we're partnering with help us communicate that message.
So we've made it to the end. Your closing question is, why are you the best person to represent the interests of the LGBTQ community in your race?
Well, I'm the one that has been in support of these issues. I have a record of supporting these issues. When I was working for Steve Costello and Hero came up and he was looking at the mayor's race, and then he had several of his more conservative constituencies saying, you really got to look at this, Steve, you really got to look at this. This is going to be something that the conservatives won't like. And he knew it was the right thing to do. I mean, he didn't hesitate. It wasn't so much me, but we knew it was the right thing to do. I will continue to know that this is the right thing to do. Discrimination has no place in our city, and it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's good for our economy to be inclusive of all communities, and I'll make sure to continue to seek out advice from the community, and I've got members of my community cabinet as well to help me with these issues. So I'll be your proponent. I'll be a strong voice for equality on city council.
So we're live streaming on Spectrum South's Facebook page this evening. If you would, please tell folks who are watching the live stream how to find out more about your campaign and more information about it.
You can find out about all my issues at SallieAlcorn.com. Facebook is Sally for the City, and Twitter and Instagram, Sallie Alcorn.
So before we give Sallie the applause she deserves, I just want folks to know the hours of operation for early voting. Early voting starts November 27th. The schedule is a little weird because of the holiday. So November 27th, 7 to 7, and then December 2nd through December 7th, 7 to 7, then December 8th, 1 to 6, then December 9th and 10th, 7 to 7. Election day is December 14th, if that makes it easier for folks. So, Sallie Alcorn for At-Large 5, thank you very much for being here. Sticking it out for the duration of the evening. We ran a little long. We really appreciate your flexibilities. Please follow Spectrum South if you're not, Transform Houston, the Trans Education Network of Texas, Lambda Next Gen. I think that's everybody. Thank you all for being here.
Chamber. LGBT Chamber.
The LGBTQ Chamber, Houston LGBTQ Chamber, all the